Have you ever felt like there is more for you? Maybe a bigger impact that you want to make, a message you want to share, or a business or a passion project that you want to start. If so, you are in the right place, and let's get this party started. Welcome to episode 1. Oh my goodness, this podcast has been such a long time coming, which I will share a little bit more about later. But this first episode is really all about you. It's about your big ideas and how Powerhouse Women as a community can really help you make the difference that you know you're meant to make. Before I forget, I want to mention you will want to listen all the way to the end because I will be sharing how you can win a free ticket to our live event in Scottsdale, Arizona this September. You do not want to miss that. And if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Lindsey. I am a wellness entrepreneur and author and the founder of Powerhouse Women, which, if you didn't already know, is a live event and online community all about helping women get out of their own way and into action around their big ideas. And what's special for me about that is Powerhouse Women was exactly that just a few years ago. It was just an idea. Before I ever had a best-selling book, before I had sold-out events, I had the tiny seed of an idea. And at that point in my life, I had let way too many ideas die because I was afraid. I let these ideas die without taking action, all because I was afraid of what someone else might think or afraid of failure, sometimes afraid of success. I was really just afraid of not being enough. And in fact, starting a podcast was one of those ideas. And I had bought all of the equipment for starting a podcast over 5 years ago, but it sat there and I did nothing. I mean, have you ever been there? Have you ever let fear stop you from doing something that you really, really wanted to do? I think we probably all have. And if that's you, you're definitely not alone. And this podcast means a lot to me because I understand you, because I am you. And I'm still on the same journey that you are, working every day to get out of my own way and continue taking action on the things that I feel like I'm uniquely meant to create. I might be a few steps ahead of where you are right now, but I've been in your shoes. And through this platform, my commitment is to connect you with tools and resources and people that have helped me get out of my own way and start making the difference that I knew I was meant to make. So if you have not heard the full story of Powerhouse Women, I'll give you the short version. And we're going to get to know each other a whole lot more through this podcast adventure. But it was just a little over 10 years ago that I was hired for my first, I like to say my first big girl job, and moved to Arizona. I'm originally from the Midwest. I am still a Midwest girl at heart. But I moved to Arizona and was working in my first real job. I was selling commercial carpet. A lot of people don't know that. I sold carpet for a living, which is pretty much as glamorous as it sounds. And safe to say, I knew pretty quickly that this was not my dream life and this career was not going to be for me forever. And it was around that time that I was investing a lot into personal development. I was listening to podcasts at that time. I think I was even listening to like audiobooks on CD. That's how long ago this was. And I was starting to attend events and really just work on myself and my mindset. And as I listened to these stories of other people who had become successful, I kept noticing that there were people making a really good living, doing something that they absolutely loved. They were able to turn something that was truly a passion for them into a viable career. And I don't know, I just didn't really have a lot of examples of that growing up. So it was the first time that I really got that seed of an idea that maybe, just maybe, I could create that kind of life for myself too. So it really started with asking myself a simple question, which was, what would I love to do every day? whether or not I was being paid to do it. And it took a little while. I really wrestled with this question for a while, but for me, the answer kept coming back to health and wellness. And it was something that I had always been interested in. I was by no means an expert, but I thought, gosh, how cool would it be to have it be my job, to be in the best shape of my life and use that as a platform to inspire others. So with a little soul searching, a little digging, I ended up starting my health and well-being business. And I started it on the side. It was kind of like my side hustle and still was working my full-time job, which, if you're doing that, if you're living that side hustle life, that that's a lot, especially living in a new town and not really knowing a lot of people, having no network. This was a big undertaking and it totally pushed me out of my comfort zone. But in just a little over 2 years, by working on myself, by being willing to be really bad, and you guys, when I say bad, I mean really bad at something, I eventually got better and I started to have more success. And it took me, it was like a little over 2 years, 2.5 years before I was ready to make the full leap into entrepreneurship. So left my job, turned in my carpet samples, and I went full-time entrepreneur, which was exciting, but it was also scary. And it was this point where now I had to prove that what I thought I was capable of was really the truth. And I've always been pretty success-driven. I have always been type A and wired to get stuff done. But at the same time, I love to control the outcome. And I really didn't like to do things or try things that I didn't know I would immediately be good at. And so all of this, really fear and self-doubt, had me playing pretty small. So on the outside, where you might have looked at my life and thought it looked great. I at that time was in my marriage. I should be clear, I'm still in my same marriage, but at that time I had a great marriage, a great career, had ultimate freedom of being an entrepreneur, being my own boss. But I knew deep down that I was maybe operating at 60% of my potential. I wasn't really willing to put myself out there and risk looking silly or not being great at something to ultimately achieve the levels of success that I wanted. And I think it's one of those things where no matter how great something looks on the outside, no matter how great the highlight reel of someone's life looks, deep down, if we know that we are not using all of our potential, it's this dull discomfort that eventually can eat away at us. And that was exactly the position that I found myself in. I almost felt guilty, like, wow, I have this great life. Why don't I feel more fulfilled? And the truth was, it came down to the fact that I just knew there was more for me. And as the world tends to work, when you are putting that intention out there, I started to really get my answers. It was like I was being pushed to the brink of how much of that discomfort I could really handle, and kept having these opportunities, these ideas that I could either choose to step forward into or choose to do nothing. And I got to a point where I was just literally sick of choosing to do nothing, not starting the podcast, not stepping out and doing more speaking engagements or things that I really felt that I was meant to do. But I was scared. And it took a phone call with my now dear friend and the editor of my book, who came to me and said, Lindsey, a book could be a really great tool for you to reach more people for your health and wellness business. And what she didn't know is I had been wrestling with a question, or really a nudge, that I was meant to pivot. And although I'd spent 6 years building a health and wellness brand, I felt like I was supposed to talk about something else. And it was the first time those words came out of my mouth. And I said to her exactly that. I said, I think I'm supposed to talk about something else. And in that conversation, really pieced together where my journey up until that point had brought me, which was that as I was building my own business, I had so many friends or acquaintances who would see the results. They would see the highlight reel that social media paints. They didn't see necessarily the nights I would stay up working until all hours of the night, or the times that I was ugly crying because I was so uncomfortable and doing things way out of my comfort zone. But people would see what they saw on the surface and make comments like, wow, it would be amazing to be my own boss. I wish I could have my own business, or I have this idea. And when I would dig further and ask them why they weren't going after that or what was standing in the way, they would list off all of the reasons why they weren't enough, why they didn't have the resources, why someone else was doing it better than them. And I realized in that moment that we needed to have more conversations about what it really looks like on the inside of building something of your own, whether that's a passion project or something that you plan to take as a full-time business. That feeling of fear and self-doubt that they were explaining to me, I kind of realized, wow, don't people know that that is exactly how it feels? That is how you know you're going in the right direction. If you feel totally scared and not sure you can do what you're about to do, that's just a sign that you're probably going in the right direction. I always equate it to if I'm about to do something that kind of makes me want to puke, just the thought of getting that far outside my comfort zone, that's usually a sign that's exactly the next goal I am supposed to chase. But instead, we look at social media, we look at all the inspiration around us. And I'm a firm believer, we don't need more inspiration. We need more women to share the real side of what it looks like to go after a big idea. We need more women who are 5, 10, 15 years ahead of where we're at in the journey to share, that fear and that self-doubt and not being sure that you can do this. That is something I still feel to this day. At least for me, I'm 10 years in, I still feel those things on a daily basis. I am feeling them right now as I embark on this new project. However, that's not a sign that I should stop. It's a sign that I'm about to grow. And we're going to talk a lot more about overcoming fear as we dive into the podcast, but I saw the need to share a different side of entrepreneurship, a different side of going after your dreams that at least I wasn't seeing, because that was what gave me permission to start moving forward on the things that I wanted to do, was hearing that women I looked up to have experienced the same things, the same fear, the same doubt that I have, and we're moving forward anyway. So in this moment, come back to the phone call with my editor friend, and she paused. It was like one of those dramatic pauses, and this came out of my mouth. I said, I think we need to share a different side of the story. Dramatic pause. And then she said, Lindsey, if you don't write that book, who's going to? And it was like this moment where she was, number one, calling me out. She was calling me out for essentially listening to the same fears I was saying I wanted to help other women overcome. So I knew I had a choice. This was kind of like one of those life-defining moments. I had a choice to say yes and lean fully in to something that scared the bleep out of me. I mean, it just scared me more than anything I had ever attempted. And something I was pretty darn sure I was going to be terrible at, because I was not a writer. I think I wrote this in the book. I've shared it before in different talks that I've done, but I had a health and fitness blog for, 3 years. And, they say publish consistent content to build your brand. And I was consistently publishing one article per year. I had exactly 3 articles on this blog. And I'm pretty sure my mom was the only one who ever read them. So thanks for that, Mom. But it was all because I was afraid. I was afraid to put myself out there. I was afraid of putting content out there that other people could judge. And I just stayed small. So I had this choice in that moment to say yes and take the leap and do something that was going to force me to grow. Or I could choose to stay the same and do nothing. Well, spoiler alert, you're listening to the Powerhouse Women podcast. I shared a little bit earlier. We have a book, a live event, an online community. And that's why I want you to know the real story behind how this all happened. It started with an idea. It started with me saying yes to something I had no clue how this was all going to come together. It wasn't like I saw the vision to write a book and host an event and eventually have a podcast, and we're even taking our event on tour internationally this year. Yeah, I didn't know enough to plan out all of that. I just had to take the first step and trust that it was going to lead me somewhere great, or I was going to grow in the process and it would lead me to the next thing that I was supposed to do. So we'll have lots more time to get to know one another. I'm sure you'll get to hear a lot more versions of that story, just the layers of it throughout this podcast journey. But number one, I promise to always keep it real with you and share the things that I am still bumping up against. Because if anyone says they have it all together, I think they're a liar, because I surely don't. And I don't think that it does us any favors to pretend that we do have it all together when this journey is kind of messy. So the two things I really want to leave you with, I want you to know that number one, that nudge you feel, maybe it's just that feeling that you are meant for more. Maybe it's a specific idea or a passion or curiosity that won't leave you alone. It keeps you up at night because it's demanding your attention. Those nudges, those curiosities and passions were given to you for a reason. But I also want you to know, they're actually not about you. They are 100% about who you will serve by taking action on them. The second thing I want you to know, you are not meant to do this alone. And I think as women, we're wired to think that we have to have it figured out, or we can't ask for help because it'll be a sign of weakness, or that we're somehow supposed to have our you-know-what together. But truly, no one person has all of the required skills or resources needed. We're wired to need one another. We're wired for collaboration. So we'll talk a whole lot about that on this podcast as well. So I want you to know it's totally normal to feel self-doubt when you're starting something new. I have been there, and number one, I've got your back. I really want you to get that. I don't want you to live with that same dull discomfort that I felt of knowing that there's more for you, but not doing anything about it. I can see you for who you are. Now, I can't physically see you, but the fact that you're listening to this show and you were somehow drawn to this message lets me know exactly the kind of woman you are, and I see you. I also see what you can become because I've been on that journey myself. I get it. It can be totally overwhelming, and especially when we try to figure it out by ourselves, it can be downright frustrating. But luckily, you don't have to do that. So you are now officially a part of what we call our girl gang, and I can't wait to meet you at a live event this year. So I promised at the beginning I would share how you could win a free ticket to our Powerhouse Women 2019 event. This is, oh my goodness, this is like the best girls' day of the entire year. I promise you, I like this event and this day better than my own birthday. It's kind of like my birthday and Christmas and New Year's wrapped in one and then dipped in glitter. That's how much fun this day is. So it's all about helping women get out of their own way and sharing the stories of women who are on that journey and who have something to teach you. And we also serve mimosas. So if you're someone like me where you get a little bit socially awkward walking into a new situation, not like mimosas are the cure for that, but they definitely help. So what we're going to do, we're celebrating the launch of this podcast by giving away a free Ultimate Powerhouse Experience ticket. So this is like the high-end VIP experience. And all that you have to do, we're just asking for you to download our podcast episodes, all of them that are coming out on this launch day. Download them all, listen to them, totally binge them. Even if you don't have time to listen to all of them today, go ahead and hit download. Subscribe to the show, and then leave us a review. Like, I genuinely want to hear what you want to hear more of. I want to know what you loved, or maybe you even want to be bold and share what your big idea or dream is. Because along the way, we are going to help keep you accountable to taking action on that. Because, like we say, you are not meant to do this alone.